Welcome to EtherLink AI Insights. I'm Alex, and today we're diving into a topic that's reshaping how enterprises think about AI strategy. The role of the AI lead architect and what it means for EU governance heading into 2026. Sam, thanks for joining me.
Great to be here, Alex. This is a critical moment for organizations. We're seeing a real shift from experimental AI pilots to actual operational deployment, and that's where governance suddenly becomes not just a compliance issue, but a business imperative.
Exactly. And the numbers back that up. 73% of organizations are struggling with governance and compliance frameworks right now. That's a huge majority. Why do you think we're seeing such a gap between AI adoption and governance maturity?
Because governance is unsexy and hard. Organizations get excited about AI's potential and deploy systems quickly, but they don't build the infrastructure to manage them safely. They realize too late that accountability structures, risk frameworks, and data governance protocols need to exist before you have a crisis, not after. It's reactive versus proactive thinking.
So the AI lead architect role is essentially filling that gap. It's the person or team that brings strategic oversight to AI deployment. Tell me how that differs from a traditional CTO or engineering leadership role.
A CTO is usually focused on technical execution and scaling infrastructure. An AI lead architect is three roles in one. They're thinking about technical strategy, yes, but they're also the governance architect and the regulatory translator. They sit at the intersection of legal, technical, product, and operations. That's a different skill set entirely.
And that's where the fractional consultancy model comes in, right? You don't need to hire someone full-time at $150,000 to $300,000 a year. You can bring in strategic expertise for 8 to 20 hours a week at a fraction of that cost.
Exactly, and honestly, for a lot of mid-market enterprises, especially in regulated sectors like finance or healthcare, fractional is actually the smarter move. You get someone with deep expertise in both AI and governance without the overhead of building out an entire function. Plus, you maintain flexibility as your needs change.
Let's talk about the regulatory landscape because that's become urgent. The EU AI Act enforcement is ramping up in 2026. What does that actually mean for enterprises right now?
August 2026 is when the next tranche of compliance requirements kicks in. If you're deploying AI systems in high-risk categories, recruitment tools, credit assessment, law enforcement support, biometric identification, you need to be able to demonstrate very specific things: risk assessments, human oversight mechanisms, data quality standards, explainability for end users, incident reporting procedures. These aren't guidelines, they're mandatory.
So if you're building a recruiting chatbot or an AI system that makes financial decisions, you're operating in that high-risk space?
Recruiting AI? Yes. That's explicitly high risk under the Act. Financial decisions, credit assessment, definitely high risk. Gen AI and enterprise chatbots are typically medium risk, which means they need transparency labeling and use case restrictions, but the enforcement burden is lighter. The key point is that organizations need to know which category they're in and have controls in place before August 2026.
That's 9 or 10 months away for most organizations listening. Is that enough time to get compliance ready?
It depends on how mature your governance is right now. If you're starting from scratch with a complicated AI portfolio, it's tight. But here's the thing. Organizations that embed governance into their architecture from day one reduce compliance costs by 40% and accelerate time to production by 30%, according to Forrester. So the sooner you start, the better your position.
Those are compelling numbers. Let's dig into what embedding governance into architecture from day one actually looks like operationally. What does that mean in practice?
It means several things running in parallel. First, you establish clear accountability structures. Who owns each AI system, who's responsible for performance monitoring, who responds when something goes wrong. Second, you build risk classification frameworks aligned with the EU categories. Third, you implement data governance protocols, tracking where training data comes from, testing for bias, validating model performance. And fourth, you embed compliance into development workflows from the beginning, not as an audit after the fact.
So it's not about a separate compliance team checking boxes at the end. It's about compliance being built into how developers and product teams work every day.
Exactly. That's the compliance by design approach. It requires cross-functional alignment, legal, technical, product, operations all working together from day one. And that's where an AI lead architect becomes invaluable. They're the person orchestrating that alignment and making sure governance isn't seen as friction, but as enabling safe scaling.
I want to bring this back to enterprise readiness, because that's a big theme here. What does an AI maturity model actually measure, and why does it matter?
An AI maturity model measures where an organization sits on a scale from "we're experimenting with AI" to "AI is embedded across our operations with sophisticated governance." It typically looks at things like strategic clarity, governance maturity, technical capabilities, data quality, talent, and compliance readiness. Why it matters. You can't mature all dimensions at once, so a good model helps you prioritize. Should you invest in better data governance first or build your legal framework first? The model helps answer that.
And a fractional AI lead architect would assess that maturity and create a roadmap?
Yes. First step is usually a readiness assessment, understanding your current state, your AI inventory, your regulatory exposure, your governance gaps. Then you work with leadership to define a maturity target and prioritize the work needed to get there. It's strategic planning, not just checklist compliance.
Let's talk about agentic AI systems, because that's a phrase that keeps coming up, and I think a lot of people might not fully understand what it means in a governance context.
Agentic AI means AI systems that can take independent actions, make decisions, execute tasks, sometimes even modify their own behavior without explicit human direction for each action. Think a recruiting bot that screens candidates and schedules interviews, or a financial system that adjusts trading positions. They're becoming mainstream, and they're more governance-intensive because there's more potential for harm if something goes wrong. The EU Act treats autonomous decision-making systems with particular scrutiny.
So as agentic AI becomes more common in enterprises, the governance requirements actually get stricter, not easier?
Much stricter. You need to demonstrate that humans can understand what the agent is doing, can override it if needed, and that you've tested it thoroughly. That's fundamentally harder than governance for traditional software. It's another reason why having experienced AI governance leadership is becoming non-negotiable.
What's the practical first step for an organization listening to this that knows they're behind on governance?
Get a professional assessment done. Map your AI systems. Identify which are high risk under the EU Act, and understand your compliance gaps. Don't guess. Then, if you don't have AI governance expertise in-house, bring in fractional leadership to help build a roadmap. You don't have to solve everything immediately, but you need clarity on your exposure and a realistic plan to address it before August 2026.
That's concrete and actionable. Sam, as we wrap up, what's the biggest misconception you're seeing organizations have about AI governance right now?
That it's a cost center. Organizations see governance as overhead, as something that slows down innovation. In reality, mature governance is a competitive advantage. It lets you deploy AI faster, with confidence, without legal exposure. Organizations that think strategically about governance are the ones winning in this market.
That's a powerful reframe. Sam, thanks for breaking this down. For anyone wanting to dive deeper into AI lead architecture, EU AI Act compliance, and enterprise readiness frameworks, the full article is on etherlink.ai. You'll find detailed frameworks, timeline information, and more specific guidance on maturity models. Thanks for listening to EtherLink AI Insights.
Thanks, Alex. Looking forward to next time.